Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Cool Careers and How You Got Them. I'm your host, Zain Raza, and it's my job to help you explore your possible future career options with some less traditional professions and paths that you might not be aware of. I'm sure lots of adults ask you what you want to be when you grow up, and if you're anything like me, you don't have an answer for them. Hopefully, my podcast gives you some inspiration. I'm very excited and lucky to be joined today by Mr. Stephen Ham, who has a very cool and interesting career. He's dedicated his career to protecting some of the most vulnerable animal populations and the environment, even going as far as working with the great Jane Goodall in the African wilderness with chimpanzees, which I'm sure we'll hear more about later. Mr. Ham's career allows him unlimited adventure and exploration, which I think is pretty amazing. And without further delay, let's get into it. Mr. Ham, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you for having me.
I'm doing great. So why don't we start out how we always do? What is your official title?
My official title is Vice President of Individual Giving at Wildlife Conservation Society, which is a nonprofit based here in New York.
So what does the Wildlife Conservation Society do?
Wildlife Conservation Society is one of the leading global conservation organizations that is unbelievably unique in that we have a 125-year history born out of the Bronx Zoo. So we own and operate the New York City zoos, Bronx Zoo, New York Coney Island Aquarium, Central Park Zoo, Prospect Park, and Queen Zoo. And then we have a global conservation portfolio in nearly 60 countries.
Wow.
We're working to save wildlife.
Mm-hmm. So how does your job fit into the goal of this company?
Yeah, so I'm responsible for raising money. So it's a $330 million organization, and the team I oversee is responsible for all of the individuals that donate to the organization. So it's the team that makes sure people are hearing about the needs of the organization and the impact, and also managing the relationship so that the donors are thanked appropriately. But whether you give a dollar or $60 million, it's all coming through the fundraising team here.
Mhm. So you manage a team who deals with all of the donations.
Yes.
Okay. And like how did you get into this role?
I mean, I when you say my title, and I'm a fundraiser by trade, but I'm really first and foremost identify as like an animal advocate, animal
Mhm.
obsessed, perhaps you would say, and really passionate about wildlife conservation. I was born and raised in Kentucky and was just out collecting turtles and catching snakes from my earliest memories. And that's my ethos that I brought to organizations like Wildlife Conservation Society that have an impact on global conservation. So my skill set, as I learned over time, I was able to communicate the needs of the organization, build relationships, and help organizations raise money, which is absolutely essential
Mhm.
for them to realize their mission.
Right. So you spoke about when you were younger growing up in Kentucky. So when you were a teenager, what were you like?
What was I like? I was probably defined as a nerd. I was, all straight A student in all the clubs, all the academic clubs and the do-gooder clubs and the service clubs, and was always just really, really leaned into my academic career. But at the same token, just like wanted any way I could access and be around animals. So when I was a teenager, like I worked at a vet for a few years because I just wanted to have that interaction with animals. And then from an early age, was like, I just want to experience and see as much of the biodiversity of this planet as possible. So that started, in my early teen years too. So when I was in eighth grade, I went to Peru for the first time, fundraised to get myself on a trip into the Amazon. And
Wow.
went down there as an eighth grader. So I would also define myself as a teenager as precocious. I still can't believe I was doing that at that early age.
Yeah, that's incredible. I haven't heard of any other teenagers doing anything like that. So From an early age, you knew that you wanted to work with animals and do something in this field?
Absolutely. Absolutely. My whole family are big animal people, dogs, cats, always have pets around, but like I wasn't getting GI Joe figurines. I was getting animal figures, and that included dinosaurs and things, but I was playing in an early age with tiger figures and those type of animal figures, which now my daughters play with. So yeah, it was just in my DNA. I don't know.
Were your family members also involved in this kind of space?
Yeah, I think all of us are interested in animals. My
Hmm.
grandmother, my maternal grandmother for sure. My sister, absolutely. Yeah, everybody was. But I probably took it to an obsessive extreme.
So you knew that you wanted to work with animals, and then did you attend college?
I did. I went to the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill and studied environmental science.
Okay, so you knew, like, even when you were in college, you were sticking with it.
Yeah, but what the vet experience taught me was that I really love being around animals, but it's biodiversity and the broader global view that really, made me excited and got me interested. Going to the Amazon was something that like totally altered my worldview. Whereas working at a vet was so valuable from understanding how difficult those jobs are, but how rewarding they can be. But it wasn't for me that day to day servicing clients or interacting. And now I work at Wildlife Conservation Society where we have the Bronx Zoo. I admire the keepers absolutely and think they do incredible work. But my drive was an interest and love of animals, but didn't have to be interacting with them all the time.
Okay,
So that was a
okay.
big differentiator for me where I was like, oh, I always thought I'd go into veterinary work or something, but then understood that there was a much bigger space that
Mhm.
has impact and does things with animals that you can do all sorts of things.
Right.
And I am pretty extroverted. So was naturally inclined towards front facing, interacting with people. And then there you go into fundraising.
All right. So you worked at the vet in eighth grade,
I worked at the vet no in high school. So I went to
high school.
Peru and the Amazon in eighth grade, and then I worked in the vet in high school and college. Yeah, local vet where we had
Okay.
a
And then what other kind of careers or internships did you have along the
oh,
way?
I did a short stint with like a small EPA department and learned about like how they monitor air quality and things
Mhm.
and knew that was not for me. And then I did in college, I went out to a chimpanzee sanctuary and interacted and understood how sanctuary management is done. And again, appreciated the impact and everything, but knew that day to day of operations of a sanctuary was not for me. I wanted to have more ability to communicate the good work and interact with people and experience diverse projects, diverse settings.
Mhm. Really quickly, can you go back and tell us what an EPA is?
Oh, the Environmental Protection Agency. Sorry, I had
Okay.
an internship with the Environmental Protection Agency, like a local environmental department that was
Mhm.
monitoring air quality and water quality. So I'd go out and take samples with the team there. Fascinating. It was just, I knew that I wasn't going to go into that field.
Because there wasn't as much interaction with other people, or because it wasn't as directly related to animals?
I think directly related to animals and also like I'm a social animal, so it was very technical. It was a lot
Mhm.
of inputting data and extricating data and then analyzing data, and that was not going to be me.
Right. So not like focusing on statistics and that kind of thing. You want
Exactly.
it to be,
Yeah.
okay, I got it.
Although in fundraising, particularly behind the scenes, everything is numbers and analyzing and projecting. So it came around and is a big part of my life.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. So obviously, I think you have a very cool career, especially even compared to some of my other guests, because I have a particular affinity for animals too. When I was younger, I
Excellent.
wanted to be a marine biologist. And
That was on top of my list. That's so funny you say that. That was one of the things I always write when I was younger. And I had no concept of what that actually meant. But I'm like, oh, marine biologist. I'll be seeing whales every day. That's what I want to do. Yeah.
yeah. So obviously I think your career is very, very cool, but in your opinion, what makes your career cool or unique?
Oh, I love my career because a number of things. Like it's taken me to places that I never dreamed I would be able to go. And didn't know would be possible in my 41 years so far, from the Arctic to Antarctica to, I mean, I lived in Africa a couple times, Southeast Asia. The only continent I haven't been to is Australia, so just seeing the world was a big part. And then the amount of amazing people doing work for animals, but then outside the space too, because I'm in fundraising, I get to interact with some of the most interesting people that I wouldn't otherwise get to have such intimate and in-depth conversations with. It is extremely interesting, and no one day is the same.
Mhm. Okay. Can you identify some special traits about yourself that let you be successful in your work?
I mean, passion, and I was lucky that I knew what my passion was early. And it was, again, I think it was just ingrained. And I think I've seen other folks that you need to try more things before you really hone in on what your passion. So I was really lucky that I was passionate, and then I'm just tenacious, and like I once I set my sights on something, I'm going to doggedly go towards that. And I would also say that my upbringing in the South and understanding the real importance of a community has really been a big part of just my interpersonal relationships that has
Mhm.
opened up career opportunities, and again those kind of conversations that otherwise wouldn't have happened. And that's just my nature of being extroverted and a good relationship steward.
Okay, so a lot of tenacity, being extroverted, and knowing what you wanted to do.
Yeah, maybe a heavy dose of ignorant too. So I was just willing to jump into anything. Like, I want to go to the Amazon, so I'm going to raise the money to go do that and send myself to. Like, it's having two daughters. I would support them 100 to 200%
Hmm.
in any of those pursuit of passions. But it just kind of blows my mind that I was so tenacious, but you could also say just didn't know fully the full risk.
Okay. So can you tell us why what you do is important?
Oh, totally. I mean, particularly my organization, but the organization, not just me, is literally saving wild places and wildlife. Like
Hmm.
we can point to a number of things, from the American bison to mountain gorillas to certain populations of whales. Like we're literally protecting and saving wildlife. And while the news is often one of doom and gloom, and there is certainly so much that humans need to better understand in regards to extinction and climate change, but there's so much hope too. Like I see the work's impact over the course of my short time on earth, and how it has allowed animal populations to grow. It has kept certain parks intact. We're in spaces that are nature is rebounding and coming back to where it wasn't. That is unbelievably rewarding and keeps me going.
Hmm.
Totally. Gives me hope.
Yeah, so speaking of mountain gorillas, I don't know, maybe not the same genus, but what was it like working with chimpanzees with Jane Goodall?
So I did not work with chimps with Jane. So here's the thing with Jane Goodall. I Around the time that I was going to the Amazon and was prepping for that, or shortly thereafter, it was early high school. I was tasked with a research project. It was like learn the library and how to use it and how to do research. And you were supposed to pick an idol and then research them. So I picked Jane Goodall, who I had been reading like her original books in The Shadow of Man, and I idolized her. But in the back was her nonprofits address that was for donations. And again, tenacious, precocious, however you want to frame it. I wrote her a letter and was like, here's my questions for the report I'm doing. And here's my questions about what a kid from Kentucky could do to get involved and follow a career path like you did. She
Hmm.
wrote back. And so that
Wow.
started a correspondence. And I course, that made me feel like I was gone to the moon. Jane Goodall's writing me. We wrote back and forth. That is the power of Jane. She understands how every individual matters. And now, having worked with her, I mean, she's, as much as she is a spokesperson for nature and Mother Earth, she's also just constantly interacting with young people, encouraging them to get involved for the planet. So we wrote back and forth. I met her the senior year in high school. My dad drove me to Louisville, Kentucky when Jane was doing a lecture. And we drove a couple hours. When Jane learned that we had driven that way, she jumped in the pickup truck with us, and we spent the afternoon with her. As I left, I would just, thanked her so much for the time and advice and everything. And again, Jane's just such an empowerer of all people. She said, "Oh no, this isn't goodbye. This is just, I'll see you next time because we're going to work together." Fast forward 18 months, I'm now in college, and I became a Roots and Shoots intern, which is a program within the Jane Goodall Institute, and then ultimately went on the road with Jane as a intern. So I was kind of her roadie along with some of her other team on her lecture tour in the United States. So I wasn't working with her with chimps. I ultimately did get out to Gombe, and I referenced some of the sanctuary work. So I've been around chimps in other contexts, but not typically with Jane. With Jane, she is the rock star for the environment, and she is on the road 300 days a year. And so I joined her for a portion of that over several years. Yeah, unbelievable privilege and unbelievably inspiring, and catapulted so many aspects of my life moving forward.
That's incredible. Are there any special things that you learned from her when you were with her?
Oh, could write books on this. The power of the individual, lean into hope, even faced with dire, information. The focus on your passion, and never underestimate the power of a single interaction and what it could do with a person, and send them off to become the other next Jane Goodall. Just totally in awe of her. She also, I could never compete, but she has such incredible energy, and I think that comes from passion. And so I learned a lot about how to sustain yourself and keep going. Yeah. She's 89 years old. We just celebrated her birthday this past April. Still traveling that much, still has the hope, still has the energy. She's an iconic hero.
Sounds kind of like you when you were talking about your tenacity and your passion
No,
for what you
no, I
do.
cannot compare myself to Jane, especially in the context of when she came about, in the 60s and things. But I mean, Jane and I definitely bonded, and certainly have certain personality traits that we share, but I'm in no league of Jane Goodall.
I don't know. We might see you there. Can you take us through a regular day at work?
Sure. There is no regular day at work. And like anybody, I spend a lot of time on Zoom and meetings. But a typical day could be me coming into the Bronx Zoo, answering a few emails. Maybe we have a supporter that's coming. And so I'll take them around the Bronx Zoo to show the impact of their work, introduce them to staff, maybe meet an animal here so that they understand the full workings of the zoo. Then might go on to have a conversation with somebody else about getting them out into Tanzania to see elephants in the wild so that they can learn more about our anti-poaching efforts. And then in the evening, I might run into the city to go to a gala where I'm sitting at some benefit where someone like Hugh Jackman is speaking, and we're talking about conservation and raising money for wildlife. So it's really varied, but always with a core centered focus on, of course, fundraising, but wildlife.
So there's no real set schedule, right? It's different
No,
every day.
no. And with me as, hyperactive and probably ADHD, that suited me. And I like that frenetic energy. I would not thrive in a space where you were just at a desk job. And some people do, and it's just not me. I don't want to be sitting at a desk and interfacing on research or driving just analytics or numbers. So,
Mhm.
but I also knew, I mean, I landed in New York. I knew that I was a Peace Corps volunteer as well. It's where I met my wife, but I knew that my greatest contribution to the conservation movement and also what I want as a person was not to just be in the field, not to be a marine biologist. There are people with better skill sets and focus and patience than me to do that. So I understood that early. And again, I credit Jane for that because I was with her and I saw that you could do so much for animals without always having to find a pathway for in the field. The other thing was this context was as a white male, I quickly understood years ago that the future of conservation was not going to be led by Americans. It was going to be, people in their local countries and communities taking it on, and we could help support that. So I didn't want to emulate even a Jane Goodall in that, hoping that I'd get to go do a research project somewhere with a certain species, because that's not the role for me and what the conservation movement needs.
Okay. I know there's no real set schedule, and that kind of adds to the adventure and excitement. But if you had to estimate, how many hours would you say you work a week?
I don't know if I stop working, but it's so that's a little tongue in cheek, especially now. But I certainly pull in 60 hours a week easily. But again, it's so fluid. It's a passion, and it's partly I've integrated work into my lifestyle.
Mhm.
So, and in this new digital age, I don't like, I probably should be better about shutting off work, but I might be shut down email, but I'm still reading the latest National Geographic, which is
Mhm.
relevant to my line of work. Or saw a headline in the New York Times about some new climate information, so I'm reading about that. Or the Washington Post has something out about politics in Tanzania and how that'll impact conservation. So it's always swirling in my head.
Or you're like me and you're watching Shark Week at home. But
Totally. Oh yeah, definitely.
do you have flexibility in your work schedule?
I do. I do. And it's because of the Wildlife Conservation Society's work ethos, but also because I've worked my way to the position I'm at, that I have more flexibility. Yeah.
So you kind of have the power to move things around, right? You're not really locked into. It's not like I clock in at
No,
9 and I leave at 5.
no,
It's
no, not even close. I am no, not even close. No, I'm measured against a series of fundraising metrics and deliverables, right? And so it's however to achieve that goal. And so I have a lot of flexibility in regards to how I structure my work existence to do that.
Mhm. We
But yeah,
talked
I
a
mean,
lot
sometimes
about.
I'm at a gala till 11 o'clock at night. There's,
Mhm.
you're going to say no to that because it's not within the 9 to 5 work hours. No way. Or I might need to do a call with program staff in Indonesia. And to do that, you got to do it at 6 in the morning. So it's 6 at their evening time. So no, this doesn't work. And I like that. It keeps things interesting and different.
Yeah, sorry for almost cutting you off there.
No,
So we talked a lot about work, and as fun as your work sounds, you have to take breaks. So how do you use your free time?
all now as a girl dad, all of my time and focus is with my family. So but my wife and I were both passionate about wildlife and the planet, so many weekends I'm at the Bronx Zoo with my two girls playing at the zoo. But yeah, most of my time outside of work is with my girls, who are 8 and 5 right now.
Okay. So you already spoke a little bit how you're extroverted and you work with other people. So is that kind of your choice, or is that just what comes with the job?
It comes with the job, but I went towards the job because of who I am. So, even if say I stayed in the fundraising world, you could work on, foundation grant writing, and that would be a lot of, you know, focused time on your own writing out foundation grants. I'm not the greatest writer, and I know that my hyperactivity would not allow for me to be as productive as I should be to deliver on that. So no, yeah, it's just been my nature and who I am is how I fell into this gig. I didn't know what a fundraiser was. Like I had no idea. Like I would think like fundraising was the Salvation Army, ringing the bell out front of Kmart in my hometown. Like that, I had no idea what it was. I got a taste of fundraising when I raised money to go to the Amazon, but I saw it completely because Jane Goodall is a brilliant fundraiser. So I learned about nonprofit management, nonprofit strategy, and why there's nonprofit boards and how the accounting is done and what type of what success looks like within fundraising. Jane Goodall modeled much of that for me, or open doors for me to understand it. I had no concept of that growing up until I experienced it on the road and working for Jane.
Mhm. Okay. So we talked a lot about the past and kind of the present in your day-to-day work, but what comes next in this field?
In this field,
Hmm.
I mean, I hope we can continue to make great gains for wildlife and that, I can raise more and more. I'm always ambitious to raise more and more money for conservation. I think really existentially, everything is going to revolve around creating solutions for climate change. And so finding that's going to be that's been a big part of my continued education, and I think that the majority of the rest of my life will be spent working for wildlife and conservation, but through the lens of how we're having a positive impact on mitigating climate change, which I didn't know that 20 years ago. We all knew it was coming, but it's here. We're at a already starting at a boiling point, and that's going to change everything in my field, as it is for every field, I think.
Hmm. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Ham. As special as an episode that this has already been, it's going to be an even more special episode because for the first time ever, we are introducing a mailbag segment. So we have a get in touch form on our website, and we found a bunch of different messages from different high school students. So to submit a question for the mailbag, please either email Zane at coolcareersandhowyougotthem.com, fill out our get in touch form on the website, coolcareersandhowyougotthem.com, or DM us on the gram at coolcareersandhowyougotthem. So today's question comes from Melissa, who's a rising junior in Massachusetts. Melissa asked a particularly relevant question to today's episode. So here's Melissa's question. I love animals and taking care of them, but my parents think I can't make a viable career out of that. What kind of job can I have other than being a vet or zookeeper that my parents will be happy for me to do while I can still work with other animals? Well, you've already given us a deep dive into one possible career path that fits this description, but do you have any other suggestions for Melissa?
Sure. I mean, one, just hope your parents hear that absolutely you can make a career and a life revolving around wildlife animal care. That you certainly don't discount zookeeping and or veterinary care. I mean, those are very viable career paths. Um, Animal rescue, think globally too. There's a lot of work more broadly. There's a big resurgence in America too of like small farming and working with like domestic animals, and I think that movement is going to take off. So that could be very fulfilling for you if you're interested in interacting with animals. I think the small farm movement is it's going to be a big game changer, particularly in the United States, but planet wide. But then just like, really, do you want to interact with animals? I'm around animals every day, but I'm not caring for animals. We have a pets they're a part of our family, but I'm here at the Bronx Zoo. I go out, I open my window right here and I can hear sea lions barking. When I drive in the morning, I see bison, buffalo running about as they get ready for their day. So I see animals every day, and just be open to think about other career paths that you could go into. Finance, you could go into fundraising, marketing, media, and you still could build it around wildlife and conservation, and be with animals.
Yeah, that's a great point. If people want to learn more about you or what you do, where can they go?
You're welcome to email me. I don't know if you want to say that on here, but you're welcome to email me. That's the best way. I'm happy to have conversations with folks. And my email is sham Stephen Ham at wcs.org. Sham, I know, very unfortunate. Stephen Ham, sham at wcs.org. More than happy to connect with anyone that's interested in this space.
Well, Mr. Ham, thank you so much for giving us a very insightful view into what you do. You've got the ear of many highly ambitious students. Do you have any final advice for them?
Yeah, get involved. This planet needs you. And I'm probably going to be working for you someday. So let's get in contact. And I would love to offer advice and go get them. We need more people fighting for this planet. So I'm ready to join you.
Well, Mr. Ham, thank you so much for joining us today. Take
Thank
care.
you, sir.